Welcome back to the Early Stage Investor, where early stage supply crunches in commodities and in assets that are unloved and hated with asymmetric upside are our favorite thing. And so there seems to be one emerging in fossil fuels. And so because of this, I have to bring you everything I know on this space. Massively earth-shattering what is truly going on. IEA, global oil demand hits record high in 2023. So that's the backdrop, right? There may be a little bit of decline, but the reality is there's massive oil demand. We're over 100 million barrels per day in oil demand. And in the midst of this, we have the Biden administration offering fewest offshore oil and gas leases in history. A new plan to sell offshore drilling rights will be limited to 3 spots, all in the Gulf of Mexico. So he's caving to environmental groups who might not understand the scarcity of this above ground resource, right? So they're not investing in becoming energy independent. They're not investing in increasing the supply of oil at all. In fact, this chart from Econometrics shows crude oil showing a huge supply deficit. This goes all the way back to 2000. Crude oil went from an extra 100 million barrels of supply after COVID down to a 200 million barrel deficit now. So that's the backdrop. That is why they had to empty the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. We only have a few hundred million barrels left. Now, this is where we were as of September 22, 2020. In the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. So there's only so many times the government can play this trick, right? They did it once for the midterm elections to lower gas prices. Maybe they can do it one more time for the presidential election. But bottom line is we're not investing in it. We have a supply crunch. They've dumped oil in the market and we're essentially out. Now, in the midst of this, the countries who we are heavily reliant on and desperate for them to provide us oil are doing this. Saudi Arabia, Russia to continue voluntary oil cuts. That is the key word, right? Voluntary. They are choosing intentionally to constrict the supply of oil when they know the US doesn't have enough. Seems like a strategic move, voluntary, choosing to do that at this time. Also a coincidence, Israel at war with Hamas after unprecedented attacks. Seems like a strategic chess move by Russia and potentially some of their allies like the Middle East, like Iran, right? Someone is supporting this move. Now, here is a history lesson. The Biden administration may be going through the exact same thing the Carter administration did in the 1970s. During the 1973 Arab-Israeli War, Arab members of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries imposed an embargo against the United States in retaliation for the U.S. decision to resupply the Israeli military and to gain leverage in the post-war peace negotiations. This is in the OPEC playbook. Wait till the U.S. doesn't have enough oil. Wait till they're dependent on you for oil production, cut production, start a war in Israel, and then impose sanctions on the US for supporting Israel, and then causing the price to spike. Crazy, but that's possible. They've done it before. This is the price of crude oil. Look at what it did in 1970. It went from $3 per barrel to $39.50 in 1980, right? A massive move upward in the price. So that's oil. Incredibly exciting when you understand what's going on and look behind the scenes. Now, obviously, it's a moving market, lots of different pieces. It's really complicated. So we're just going to have to stay on top of what is going on in that space. Now, let's take a look at what's going on with coal. Similar story. Germany approves bringing coal-fired power plants back online this winter, October 4th. I thought Germany was into green energy, but they're not. They can't be. And it's actually a little bit pathetic when you think about how much money they dumped into green energy, how little return they've gotten. So now they have to go back to coal, right? India may boost coal power fleet 25% by 2030 amid rising demand. Power minister says reliable electricity supply is a priority. Third biggest emitter is still aiming for net zero by 2070. So they're talking a big talk about green energy. The reality is coal is absolutely necessary. And it seems like humans are starting to realize that reliable electricity supply is a priority. Global coal demand set to remain at record levels in 2023. Yet another story that no one realizes, right? Demand records in 2023. Now, who is investing in coal? What ESG fund is investing in coal? Because this is where the sentiment is in this space. Michael Bloomberg pumps $500 million into bid to close all U.S. coal plants, right? What coal mine in their right mind would invest in coal capex when this is happening? Very few. There might be like 3 left when all this is said and done. And they're probably going to be like the tobacco companies that had monopolies once all competition in the space was removed due to regulation. So what happened with tobacco was advertising wasn't allowed. Only a handful were actually allowed to remain, right? Dominant. They got monopolies and their investors did extremely well. So that may happen to the last remaining coal companies. If you want to know which ones I'm investing in, I will open that up to you soon via my Patreon. California needs a $370 billion grid investment, Edison says. So in the midst of all this, how financially secure do you think the United States is right now? Do you think we have the capability to invest hundreds of billions of dollars into these green energy projects? They can't even keep the government open, right? How are they going to invest trillions of dollars into these green energy initiatives? They might go back to coal just like Germany did. Just a hunch. So the few remaining companies that can export coal globally are going to do extremely well just feeding the booming machine, which is China and India long term, right? And so this chart says it all. We have global consumption moving up. Does not matter what the rest of the world says they will do, what Michael Bloomberg says they will do. This is the reality of what is going on in the space. Let me know if you have any questions. We'll stay on top of this market.